Good evening and welcome to our City Council meeting for Monday, June 15th, 2020. Due to the spread of COVID-19, we're meeting electronically as we have for the last several weeks in accordance with the provisions of the Iowa Public Information Board. So starting off, I'll call us to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Miller.
Here.
DeBoer. Cruz.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Dara.
Here.
Sires.
Here.
Tiber.
Here.
Councilmember DeBoer absent, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First item, number one, is the regular meeting of June 1st, 2020. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. So moved.
The motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And I will ask then for any agenda revisions, Madam Clerk.
Just one, Mr. Mayor. Executive session item will be considered prior to public forum. It was inadvertently mixed up, so those will be switched around.
Yes, ma'am. So I'll do that right after staff updates then. For a special order of business tonight, item number 2 on the agenda is receive and file bids received for the sale of $3,430,000 in general loan obligation notes, Series 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded. I will open it up for discussion from city staff. I believe John Burmeister here tonight to help us with that discussion as well.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Burmeister with PFM. It's a pleasure to be communicating with you over the Zoom. Earlier today, the city did solicit proposals from underwriters on the purchase of the $3,430,000 general obligation capital loan notes. And before we go into the bid results, I just wanted to mention that I'm honored to tell you that the city of Cedar Falls has been upgraded to a AAA rated community. As you guys may know, that's the highest rating that can be achieved by any entity, city, corporate bond financing. The city has been reviewed over the last few years. About 20 years ago, we ended up getting into the AA3. We've been pushed into the AA1, and now it's a AAA rating. I think Jennifer did share with you the credit report. I encourage you to read through that. It's basically your report card. And I'll just start out with the first sentence, which I have never seen in 22 years in terms of how they describe your credit. They flat out say your credit profile is exceptional. And I've never seen the word exceptional used in a credit report before, so you should be very proud of that. They also go on to say that your robust financial performance has resulted in a very strong financial operating fund balance and liquidity. Fixed costs are low. Debt is modest because the city cash finances most of its cash needs. So I think that just kind of goes to show that you are setting money aside. You are cash funding a lot of your projects. A lot of cities kind of divert to selling bonds for a lot of their capital needs without setting cash aside. I think so. You should be very proud of your use of cash as well as debt. And then also they have been looking through various credits as it relates to the effect on the COVID-19, and they do make note that the city has a lot of revenues coming in that aren't necessarily under immediate pressure from the lack of economic activity that you're seeing. They obviously go on to make note that you have sales tax receipts, but those are going to be manageable by the city given your financial flexibility. And then I did look. There's about like 18,000 cities in the United States. So that puts the city of Cedar Falls with their AAA rating at right around 1.2% of all cities in the United States are rated AAA. And then for those cities that are rated by Moody's, 9.4 of those folks are rated AAA. And then in Iowa, you may recall West Des Moines, Clive, and Iowa City are the 3 AAA rated communities in the state of Iowa. And so that's something to be very proud of. I think when you're looking at your results, this is an independent rating review. They look at a lot of credits throughout the United States, and they have come back with a lot of positive things that the city has done, staff, as well as the city council, and all of the decisions that you've been making over the last 20 years. And so the AAA rating, why is that important? That reduces the cost of the borrowing to the city. It encourages investors, particularly in this environment where the credit worthiness is being deteriorated and across the United States for a lot of cities. In fact, the rating agency had a debate whether or not this was prudent for them to be upgrading the city of Cedar Falls to AAA in this environment. I thought that was interesting. And when they kicked back and looked at all of the metrics, the operating performance, including how you're going to anticipate moving forward with the challenges that you're going to have with this COVID-19, they felt that you were well positioned to take on those risks, and you're going to probably do really well given your historical performance. And so with that, I'll then turn it over to the bid tabulations that I believe Jennifer emailed to everybody. You can see here that we received 7 different bids from underwriters. UMB Bank out of Kansas City, Missouri, they came in at a bid at a 0.9268%. So that I think is one of the lowest rates that the city has ever received. This is a 10-year term. So you're now borrowing over a 10-year term at a 0.9268%. That's unheard of. It's, I think, a historical all-time low. You can see the cover came in at D.A. Davison at a 0.9282. So really tight bidding in terms of the low bid versus the cover bid. You can see they're really fighting for the city's bonds. And then there's 5 other bids, start with Robert W. Baird, and then Stifel Nicholson, Northland Securities, FHN, and BNY. And then there's about 29 different underwriting firms in all of the bids. I'm also if I counted this up correctly, there's actually underwriters from 22 different states throughout the United States. So the city's high rating, your great financial results has kind of played really well today because of these great bids, the low interest rate. And if I'll just open up to any questions. And if there aren't any, we would recommend that you award this to UMB Bank at a 0.9268%.
Okay, so I'll open it up for council questions or discussion. Okay, seeing none, certainly would like to congratulate staff on these decisions and being able to pull us to this incredible rating, and for the decisions of council for the years past that helped to bring us there. So we really appreciate 20 years of work, not something that's handled in 2 or 3 years, but is a long haul effort. So thanks to everyone who was involved in that, past and present. So it's been motioned and seconded. This is a receive and file. So as I understand, this requires a roll call vote.
This one would be a voice vote.
A voice vote. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that passes. So that moves us to item 3, which is the resolution directing the sale of $3.4 million in general obligation loan notes, series 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion from council?
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Miller.
I just wanted to echo your sentiments to the finance department and Director Rodenbeck and everybody else in the department. This is all the stuff that happens every day that nobody really talks about. So I think you guys do a great job, and evidenced by this latest news. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded. If no other comments, then this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Tiber.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And thanks so much for joining us, Mr. Burmeister. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Next
John.
item, go ahead.
I just said, thanks, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So next item is old business. Item number 4 on the council agenda is to pass ordinance 2967, vacating certain public right-of-way along Prairie Parkway upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Any council discussion? And this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Tiber.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I also apologize. I want to bring in, if there are public questions or comments on these items going forward, I will do that as well. I apologize for that. that brings us to number 5, which is reconsideration of resolution 21-985, approving and authorizing execution of an agreement with Perkins and Will relative to developing a resilience plan for the city of Cedar Falls. Is there a motion to reconsider?
So moved.
Been motioned and seconded. I will open this up for council discussion, reconsideration. And see, Councilmember Cruz,
Yes.
go ahead.
I guess I'm the person who put forth the request here, and I wanted to comment along the lines of some of the things I said last time.
And Daryl Cruz, I'll just interrupt real quickly. This is the motion to reconsider. After this item, after it's approved to reconsider, then we'll move into a motion for the approval of the item itself. So if it makes sense, we're just approving that we're going to reconsider it. And then we can get into discussion of actually voting for or against it.
Okay.
And Mayor, can I ask who seconded it?
I did, Jackie. Mark?
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So just to be clear, it did have to be someone from the prevailing side who did second that and make the motion. So it's been motioned and seconded. And
For clarification, Mayor, is a vote to approve that warranted right now?
no, this is just the motion to reconsider. So this will be a voice vote. And when it comes to the point of basically reapproving what we approved last time, then that'll be, I believe, a roll call vote. That's correct. So it's a 2-step process here. So all we're doing is moving to reconsider. So at this point, I will open it up for the public if there are public questions or comments just on the reconsideration, whether this should be reconsidered or not. I know it's a little bit tricky. So I see 290, or excuse me, just last two is 61. So I'm going to allow you to talk. And yes, go ahead, name and address for the record, 61.
Jim Skane, 2215 Clay Street.
Go ahead.
And Mr. Mayor, everything that has been passed so far has not enabled the public to participate, and it was extremely important that the public participate. On this motion to reconsider, it is a matter of bringing it forward, but the point is that the motion to reconsider itself is important to pass. But I am, distressed that there was no public participation in the council committee of the whole, and that makes it an illegal meeting. And there is been no ability for the people to participate. On the loan, I think it's important to say that that money is money that came from City Falls Utilities Fund, and it was transferred a couple of meetings back. And now it's being transferred into loans that will be used for capital improvement. And it seems to me that the rushing that through was just too bad.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane. I allowed that extra comments about the previous items just because I had inadvertently not opened that up to public comment. So that's why it was important to let Mr. Skane have that opportunity to discuss. So with that, I see no other comment from the public. So it's we're at the point of motioning just to reconsider, and this is a voice vote. So if there's no other comments for the reconsideration, then we'll do voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, and I think we'll need a show of hands. Ms. Danielson, were you able to capture that without a show of hands? Okay, so show of hands if you are an aye. So I see 1, 2, 3. And for the nays? We have 1, 2, 3. So, Mr. Rogers, where does that put us since we don't have Councilmember DeBeer here tonight?
Motion fails.
Okay, so that motion fails as the reconsideration, which
Correct.
means we wouldn't go into the discussion of that item.
Correct.
So, okay, so that motion did fail, which means for the public's interest, the agreement with Perkins and Will stays in effect, and we'll move forward to have that contract signed to move forward. Next on the item list is on the new business, we have the consent calendar, which is items 6 through 14. And these are items that would be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or the public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does anyone wish to pull an item from council from 6 to 14? Okay, seeing none?
I'd like to pull one.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Councilmember Harding. Which
I'd
one?
just like to pull 12.
12, okay. So item 12 will be pulled. And from the public, so 1361, go ahead, sir. Which one would you like to pull?
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Skane, go ahead. Which one item would you like to pull from the consent calendar?
There's a point of order here that none of these motions that can be approved on a single vote that conflicts with
Mr.
chapters
Skane?
21.
Yes, Mr. Skane, please. Mr. Skane,
to
you have item 6 through 14 that you would like to pull. We're not discussing whether the consent calendar is legal or not.
Okay, 6 through 14. 6 through 14. I'm not limited to one. I'm not limited to one.
We're not going to allow you to pull every single item just for the sake of.
Why not? Why not?
Because the point of the consent calendar and also of the resolution calendar is to streamline the flow of business so that items that don't have controversy or need separate discussion are passed along so that we can move forward to the items that do need actual discussion. And Mr. Skane, this is the last time I'm going to explain this to you.
I have reviewed all of these, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Skane.
I have reviewed all of them, and there are aspects of each one of these that need to be discussed. They are not consent in the sense that everybody agrees.
And are you planning to then speak on items 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14? Because you have
Yes, please.
questions about each one?
Yes. Yes. I have been prepared for this. I have reviewed the agenda very carefully, and all of those items are not consent items.
Council, I'm going to. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Point of order. We've had this discussion previously regarding, with all due respect to Mr. Skane, and I understand his point, but we've had this discussion previously, and I don't feel like we need to have it again.
Would anyone from council object to denying this? Because he's obviously trying to pull the entire consent calendar just for the sake of pulling it. Okay, I see no objection. So I will not allow that, Mr. Skane. When you come to a council meeting next time, if you have a specific item you would like to speak about or have concerns about, we would be happy to entertain it. But the entire point of the consent resolution calendars is to move business along. We are not hiding anything. We're simply moving business quickly, as happens at council meetings and parliamentary meetings all over the world. So moving forward, I see Mr. Fairbanks. Yes, Mr. Fairbanks, would you like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
Item 43, I just have a couple of questions.
And that's on the resolution calendar. So we'll come back to you for 43. So we're just talking about the consent calendar right now, which is item 6 through 14.
My apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Move we approve the consent calendar.
Okay, it's been moved to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor say aye, minus 12.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And I will read that. Item 6 was a receive and file a proclamation recognizing June 19th as Juneteenth Freedom Day. Item 7 was receive and file a proclamation recognizing the week of June 17th as Waste and Recycling Workers Week. 8 was receive and file the resignation of James Newcomb as a member of the Visitors and Tourism Board effective July 1st, 2020. I thank Mr. Newcomb for his service over the past several decades and wish him well in his future work. Item 9 is approving recommendations of the mayor relative to the appointment of members to boards and commissions. Item 10 is receiving and filing the Committee of the Whole minutes of June 1st, 2020. And item 11 was receiving and filing communication from the Civil Service Commission relative to a certified list for the position of Planner 3. Item 13 was approving applications for cigarette, tobacco, nicotine, and vapor permits. Item 14 is approving applications for beer permits and liquor licenses. So those have been approved, and now we move back to item 12, which is receiving and filing a communication from the Civil Service Commission relative to a certified list for the position of Public Safety Officer.
Excuse me, Mayor. We need to take a vote on 6 through 14.
Okay, so 6 through 14, it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that and opposed? All right, so that then does bring us to item 12. Thank you, Madam Clerk, which is that communication from Civil Service Commission for Public Safety Officer. Is there a motion to approve that item?
Move.
Second.
The motion and seconded, and I will open it up for council questions.
I just had a quick question. I just wondered with this list, no issues, how many, if we could have an update just real quick, how many PSOs do we currently have, and how many are we anticipating hiring based off this list for the future? Just curious.
I can answer that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Director Olson.
So we currently have 72 public safety officers. We will be hiring 2 off of this list, which will put us to a total of 74 public safety officers.
Okay, to answer your question, Mr. Harding?
That's pretty much it. Appreciate it.
Okay, great. So I see Mr. Skane's hand up for this item. Yes, Mr. Skane, go ahead for item 12.
Yes, this process, again, you have the possibility of 74 public safety officers, and I would remind you that you have absolutely no professional firefighters that are on the staff, and there's no question that the numbers that are hired and the current numbers, there are few who are really qualified as professional firefighters. And I think that is alarming for those of us who live in Cedar Falls, because we do not have proper fire protection.
Mr. Skane, this is specifically related to the certified list for public safety officers.
Yes, yes, it is. It is related to it, because the certified list, and it doesn't even indicate whether those 2 that are going to be hired would have any cross appointment to be firefighters.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane.
May I comment, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
So I want to clarify. Mr. Harding did ask me how many, if he's specific on PSOs. I need to clarify. We have 72 full-time employees between the police and fire divisions. This will bring us to 74. There are some that are just, that I shouldn't say are just, but are firefighters, not cross-trained as police officers. There are a few police officers that are not cross-trained as firefighters. So I do want to clarify that. I would also like to add that of this certified list, one of them is actually certified as a firefighter 1, a firefighter 2, and is an instructor and an EMT. So some of the individuals on the list are certified in one discipline or the other.
Okay,
and some are not at all. Most are out of college with no certifications.
Okay, and so just to clarify, with that public safety officer, the expectation would they would be cross-trained as police and fire, correct?
That is correct.
All right, any other questions from council on this or comments for item 12? Okay, then all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Yeah, that passes. And that brings us out of the consent calendar and into the resolution calendar. The following items will be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. So this is items 15 through 50. Does anyone from council wish to pull an item?
39.
I see 39. Others?
50.
50. Okay, others? So I have 39 and 50 from council, and from the public, Mr. Fairbanks, I remember you had 43, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, any others you wish to pull?
Nope, that's all.
Okay, thank you, we'll do that. And Mr. Skane, do you have an item you wish to pull from the resolution calendar?
I guess
my apologies, Mr. Skane, I had you muted, so go ahead from the beginning.
I guess even though these aren't timed items, the council is saying that there could only be one that I would pull out of the remaining items there.
You're allowed to pull any. It says public request that a specific item be considered. So if you wish to pull multiple, if you have questions or comments about them, you're welcome to. Our only concern is pulling the entire resolution calendar for the sake of pull. So if you have specific items you wish to pull, please go ahead.
Okay. Let me get here, because there's item item 24.
Okay.
Then item 25.
Okay.
Item 29.
Okay.
And then I would like to pull if possible 45 through 50. They're all similar, but
okay. Yeah, we've already had 50 pulled. So you wish to pull 45 through 49, and we can do that.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Yes, Councilmember Miller?
is this not the same thing that we discussed?
I'm going to assume that it's not. I can't tell him what he's going or assume what he's going to pull. He's not pulling every single item. So I'm going to honor it. It would be dangerous not to. So thank you, Mr. Scan. I've got for you items 24, 25, 29, and then 45 through 49. Any others from the public wish to pull items? Okay, thank you. So I'll read the other items that we aren't going to be pulling. It'll take a little while. Resolution calendar. Item 15 is a resolution approving and adopting the city's FY21 appropriations resolution. 16 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an administrative services agreement with Wellmark Blue Cross and Blue Shield relative to the city's FY21 health plan. 17 is a resolution approving a stop loss policy with Wellmark relative to the city's employee health plan. 18 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement with Delta Dental of Iowa for group health insurance policy relative to the FY21 dental plan. 19 is a resolution approving restated cafeteria benefits plan and approving and authorizing execution of a business associate contract relative to the cafeteria plan. 20 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a client authorization relative to FY21 insurance brokerage and risk management. 21 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a engagement letter to perform city's audit. 22 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a cooperative agreement for the use of swimming pools with the Cedar Falls Community School District. 23 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement to support economic development with Community Main Street relative to an FY21 economic grant. 26 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution for agreement to support economic development with College Hill Partnership for an economic development grant. 27 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement to support economic development with College Hill Partnership relative to SMID funds. 28 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a FY21 facade improvement fund agreement. 30 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement in support of the Cedar Falls Historical Society for a betterment grant. 31 is resolution authorizing execution of agreement in support of College Hill Partnership for a community betterment grant. 32 is resolution approving authorizing execution of an agreement in support of Fortepan, Iowa for a betterment grant. 33 is the same for a betterment grant for Volunteer Center for Cedar Valley. 34 is one for the Waterloo Cedar Falls Symphony Orchestra. 35 is approving and authorizing a lien notice and promissory note for a rental conversion incentive program house, and same for 36. Item 37 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a utility easement encroachment agreement for a monument sign over utility easements at 6707 University. 38 is a resolution approving a central business district overlay zoning district site plan for construction at 312 West First Street. 40 is a resolution approving expenditure of funds for a combination dump truck snowplow. 41 is the same for a side load automated refuse collection unit. 42 is a resolution approving and accepting the contract and bond of Boulder Contracting for the 2020 sidewalk infill project. 44 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of Amendment 4 with the Flood Mitigation Board for using sales tax increment revenues for the downtown levee improvement flood mitigation project. And then everything else is pulled. So is there a motion to approve these items minus 24, 25, 29, 39, 43, and 45 through 50?
Moved.
So it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Tiber.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that brings us back to the first item in the resolution calendar that was pulled, which is 24, resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement to support economic development program of Cedar Falls Community Main Street relative to the SMID district funds. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Motion and seconded. And Mr. Skane, I believe you had a question or comment about this item?
Yes. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Yes, on this one, as it is worded, it says that there is the self-supported municipal improvement district funds. Where did those funds come from, and what is the use of those funds? How do they? It says it supports economic development, but exactly what will those funds be used for, and where do those funds come from, and how much are they?
In this case, I can answer that for the municipal district funds. Those are set for items like this. They're set aside for spending in that district. Would city staff have anything extra to add to that?
Mayor, I can join in. There is a self-supported tax in the downtown area. So it's actually the property tax owners downtown have an extra tax that they tax themselves on and pay in. And the city collects those funds, and then we send those back to Community Main Street. Primarily what that goes for is to fund the Community Main Street organization. But again, why we have an agreement with Community Main Street is because those are collected through the property tax system. We collect them, and then we have to pay them to Community Main Street.
Okay, thank you, Becca. Thank you. So any other questions from council on that item? Seeing none, it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz, Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Tiber.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. That'll bring us to item 25, which is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a FY21 facade improvement fund agreement with Cedar Falls Community Main Street. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second.
Motion and seconded. And any questions, discussion from council? Then I'll open for Mr. Skane. Yes, go ahead, sir, for this item.
Yes. On this one, 25 says, now, once again, we're talking about money that is city money that will be provided for facade improvement. And in that particular process, is there any part of that improvement that is on the building owners? Because with all the rebates, it seems, in fact, what was said just earlier, what is invested by the building owners and the developers is rebated back. So essentially, those people aren't paying anything, are they?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane. Yeah, so the 21 facade improvement fund, is that supplemental to what Community Main Street buildings or within that district would pay on their own normally, or is it by need, or how does that operate?
I can answer that, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, this is a separate pool of money that both College Hill Partnership and Main Street, Community Main Street get. This was a pilot program that was started last year to fund facade improvements in downtown and College Hill. I believe the programs are developed by College Hill and Community Main Street, so they have their own application requirement, and the business owner has to apply through them, Main Street, to get the funds. And I believe in Main Street's case, they do require a one-to-one match, so it's not just a fully funded city program. And again, this is for facade improvements. So, and these aren't really tied to any current development agreements, as the previous speaker stated. So I know this past year, there's been several applications that Main Street has used this funding for. And again, this is just continuing that project that was started last year for the next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion from council on this? Then seeing none, it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote, please.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Tiber.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 29 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement to support fulfilling the vision campaign for economic vitality of Gross Cedar Valley relative to an FY21 economic development grant. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So move.
The motion and seconded. I'll open for council discussion. Seeing none, I think for Leanne Saul, I see you out there, so your hand's up. But go ahead, Ms. Saul.
Hi, I have a couple questions. Number one, on this item, how much of the incentive has been paid out in the last few years? I see you have the base amount of 27, and then you have up to 22,000 in this next agreement. I'm just curious as to how much incentive money has actually been paid out. And then I would be curious to know, was it paid out $1,000 per acre? Or was it for the $1,000 for the $250,000 in tax value addition, or was it for full-time jobs? I'd be very interested in knowing what results we're getting from that relationship with Gross Cedar Valley.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Saul. So I'll turn it over to staff for that question. Do we have that the details available for that?
Yeah, I can get into that, Mr. Mayor, again. So for this contract for this year, yeah, it's 27,500 base, 22,000 in incentives. I believe in the previous couple of years, the incentive was up to 20,000 and a little bit smaller base. So it's gone up a little bit for this upcoming year. And if you remember, the Gross Cedar Valley is supposed to come and give semi-annual project updates. And I think they were at the last council meeting where they provided information on what they're working on. They do provide a report to us. And then in that report, they did ask for the incentive payment. So for this past year, we did pay the full, I believe, $20,000 in incentive payment, which we have that report on. Ms. Saul's right. In the contract, it does state certain reasoning for the incentive payment. Gross Cedar Valley did put that together in the report as to why they're asking that. It's not just for the jobs or the acres. It also is for time spent on certain projects, of which they did indicate in their previous reports when they did ask for that incentive payment. So I can pull those reports. I don't know off the top of my head if Ms. Saul would like that.
Okay, so we don't have it available right here, but we can provide that to her if she requests that. It sounds like she has. So I'll go over to Mr. Skane then, unmute. And Mr. Skane, go ahead, sir.
Yes, isn't this part of the downtown project? And isn't it, when they talk about fulfilling the vision, isn't it part of that total fund that is going to be spent of $140 million?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane, for the question. For staff, I'm not aware of this being part of the downtown project. I don't know if he's talking about the downtown visioning project, but for those dollar figures, can you answer on that one or provide an insight?
This is unrelated. It's not related to the downtown vision plan at all.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council on this item? Seeing none, then it requires a roll call vote.
Miller?
Aye.
Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Aye.
Dara?
Abstain.
Sires?
Aye.
Tiber?
Aye.
5 voting aye, 1 abstain, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that brings us to our next page, which is next is item 39, a resolution approving an occupancy permit prior to the acceptance of public improvements in Prairie Winds 4th edition. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
The motion and seconded. I'll open it for council discussion.
Yeah, I just had some questions on, so if we vote just in voting and then also an update, if we vote on this, if we all vote yes, we're allowing the occupancy. If we deny, we're not allowing the occupancy. That's correct. That's how I'm reading it correctly.
Yes, so that's the case. We would have to actually approve this item.
Okay.
If we didn't approve it, then the occupancy permit would not be granted.
All right. My question also is can we get a staff update? Is this something that that we would do for other developers? I just want to catch where we're at with the process and make sure that it's fair as possible.
Yes, there have been a couple cases where we have brought to the council table consideration of occupancy prior to the public improvements being accepted. We tried to make sure that that's a very limited basis. We came forward with this subdivision in February with a couple of those. Prior to that, about a year or two ago, we had I think around 5 homes in the Arbor subdivision, and we've had this instant in the Western homes as well. So we've had a couple over the past 10 years or so. It is not very frequent and it's not ideal. You want to have all the public infrastructure completed, but sometimes there are complications that make it difficult to do that.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Sires.
My question only is, isn't this up to inspection services? Why does this come before council? Can inspection services figure this out and make their recommend?
It's not
give the
related.
occupancy or not?
No, by subdivision code, it's required that an occupancy request prior to the public improvements being accepted, which means totally completed, installed, passing all inspections through engineering, and coming forward to city council for public acceptance. If request for occupancy of a building happens prior to that, then it requires a council vote on that matter. And so that's where we are today with this. They're requesting to move into the home subject to a final inspection of the home, assuming that that passes. They'd like to move the family in, but we have not accepted the street, the sewer, the water, all those utilities.
Thank you.
Is it, for Director Sheets, is it possible that those things may be functioning, but they just haven't been certified yet?
Yes, they are functioning. That's a very good clarification because yes, there are 4 homes already occupied in Prairie Winds Fourth. So everything's functioning. It's a matter of completing everything and double checking that it meets all the standards.
Okay. I see Mr. Dahlstrom has his hand up. So Mr. Dahlstrom, name and address for the record, please, sir.
Brent Dahlstrom, 5016 Samantha Circle, Cedar Falls, Iowa. Yeah, so hate to request something that varies from code on the subdivision. We're down to 2 very small items. One is an item we've ordered but is back ordered. The other one is being taken care of this week. So like Stephanie said, we do have 4 families that have already moved into this subdivision. This would be the 5th one. Happens to be my backyard neighbor. And would love for you to consider allowing them to move in while we wait for these final items.
Do you have any idea of how long it will take to receive those? Is it weeks?
I don't. It's been a challenge in some items that we order just do not give lead times or we don't even have a knowledge of when they will be provided. I do have a fear we have a significant amount of homes being built in this subdivision, and if that item continues to delay, what will we do with the other families that are building in this subdivision as well?
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Dahlstrom. Mr. Fairbanks, I see you. So name and address for the record, please, sir. Here you are.
405 Spruce Hills Drive, Cedar Falls, Iowa. I think this is a fair request. Having been in the situation, it's good to see some latitude. And there's no reason, providing it's not a safety issue, that families shouldn't be allowed to move in. I know that they want to close things up, but having been in the situation, I think it's a reasonable and fair request.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Skane, go ahead, sir.
No, I'm sorry, not on this particular item.
All right,
I thought it was another item.
I'll put your hand down then for now, and just so I can keep clear on this. Just a moment here. Okay, and a question I've got, it says in the resolution, city staff recommends denial of the request. I know some action has been taken place the last few days on this. Is it still staff's recommendation to deny the request?
It is at this point. Now I would like to note, as you've said, Mayor, that there really are not too many items that cause concern. It's just a matter of the ongoing nature. So, in February, we did recommend approval of those items based on the winter conditions. And at this point, while I know the developers talked about complications, we're getting concerned about it not being able to be closed out and want to encourage that get done. And I know that the developer is working hard on that. We actually talked this afternoon about that. And much of the material has been submitted to us for review, but we do need to review that and make sure that it is all in order. And then there are 2 remaining items, one of those on back order.
Okay, thank you. So it's been motioned and seconded. Any other council discussion for this? Councilmember Harding, go ahead.
Can we get an idea of what's back ordered? By any chance?
I just don't see that as being germane. Like, we're not going to be able to tell what, or if it's what the cost is of the items, that sort of thing.
Well, not necessarily the cost, but does it factor into any safety issues that could arise in the future if we pass this and the family's living in there? I mean, we are talking about sewage and other things that could pose major problems, correct?
Okay, Director Sheet. Yeah.
Sure, that item wouldn't be related to occupancy of the home. It's some of the sewer chimney seals that just need to get completed. So I don't see any safety issue with granting an occupancy at this point.
Okay, so no safety issue.
No.
I guess. All right, thinking out loud. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other council questions or comments? Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Tiber.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item 43, which is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a professional services agreement with Foth Infrastructure and Environment for design services relative to the Union Road reconstruction project. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open it for council questions and discussion first. Seeing none, I know Mr. Fairbanks had brought this up. So Mr. Fairbanks, go ahead, sir.
Craig Fairbanks, 405 Spruce Hills Drive, Cedar Falls. This road has been a maintenance nightmare for the last 3 to 5 years. Every year it looks like you're reconstructing it and putting it together. My question isn't about necessarily the study. If the study is done, how soon would that work be started and completed?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fairbanks. So for staff, is there an answer for that? I think that was in the packet.
I would be able to address that, Mr. Mayor. So currently, the stretch of roadway on Union Road from West 27th south to University Avenue is planned in the CIP for FY24. And if you recall Mr. Gaines's presentation a few meetings ago about moving design dollars up due to the federal stimulus package that will be coming out later this year. And ultimately, the requirements in that stimulus money is to have these projects shelf ready. So we have to have it designed. So we're trying to move the design dollars up to get it designed so we can go after some of this federal stimulus money. And if we do not get granted any money, we would kind of have it shelf ready to build in FY24.
Okay, thank you. So that will bring us to Mr. Skane. Go ahead, sir. I see your hand up.
Yes, I noticed that this is with Foth Engineering, and Foth Engineering is the one that caused massive overruns on University Avenue. And I would think that the city would not go back to Foth Engineering for a project like this, because inevitably there will be overruns because of the nature of the company. And so, I really object to awarding a contract to Foth Engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Skane. And since that's speaking to the reputation of a company for city staff, would you care to counter on that for the overruns?
Well, in 2016, we went through with the council what the changes in the project were based on those bids. We talked about how some of the additions to the project, somewhere around $5 million, were related to moving up, doing the frontage roads where that had been in the CIP and thought to be done at a later time, but that was integrated into the project. And then there was also discussion about the extensive storm sewer improvements that occurred. And so we explained all of that in the reasoning for the changes prior to the contracts moving forward.
Okay, so not contractor related overruns, but just project overruns, as I understand it. Okay, so any other questions or comments from council on this item? Then it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Tiber.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 45 is a resolution setting July 6th as the date of public hearing to consider entering into a proposed agreement for private development with Community Bank and Trust. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Council discussion? Okay, and Mr. Skane had brought that forward. Do you wish to comment on that item, Mr. Skane?
Yes, actually, my comment on 46 would be applicable to the other ones as well. So,
do you want to just pull item? Well, we've already pulled it, Mr. Skane. So,
yeah, no, I'm just saying that I don't need to speak on the others because they're all the same. There is no provision for hearings in city council meetings. Those processes are invented for the purpose of bringing items forward. And of course, there's no process for having a section called let's see, that are considered under. But the point is, any hearing that comes before the council is impermissible, and the item should be entertained as a separate specific item.
Thank you, Mr. Skane. And so the item has already been pulled for 45. So it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
We have to have a roll call vote.
Oh, excuse me. This requires a roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Miller?
Mr. Mayor, as a point of clarification, are we not required by law to set to process this accordingly? We have to have a resolution setting the date for a public hearing, do we not?
I could jump in here, Mr. Mayor. That's true.
Yes.
And the requirement for a public hearing is state mandated.
Right. That's not under debate here.
No.
All right. Thank you. So as a point of order also, being as Mr. Skane has requested to not consider item 46, 7, 48, 49, or 50. Actually,
yeah.
Okay, so just to 49, I'd like to entertain doing this as a single roll call vote. Any objection to that?
No.
Okay, seeing no objection, I'll just rewind here and say for the resolution calendar, we'll consider 45, 46, 47, 48, and 49 as a single item. And is there a motion to approve these items?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. And any council discussion then requires a roll call vote.
Miller?
Aye.
Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Aye.
Dara? Sires?
Aye.
Tiber?
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 50 is a resolution receiving and filing and setting July 6, 2020 as the date of public hearing on the Clay Street water quality improvements. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and seconded. Council discussion. Go ahead.
Mayor, if I may, I was hoping for and some of this may be warranted at the public hearing itself, but just for some background from staff on this, specifically regarding 16th Street being one of the only, if not the only brick paved road left in the city, but as well just background on the scope.
Sure, I'd be able to address that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So previously, the city applied for a REAP grant for water quality improvements as it relates to Clay Street Park. Part of those water quality improvements included 2 bio cells, which were needed to obtain the grant. Additionally, there will be a permeable alley installed similar to ones that we have constructed previously. There will be no work on the adjacent side streets other than the approaches into the alley. But it'll be a permeable alley. There'll be a large biocell kind of in the center of the park area. And then in addition to that, there'll be one up at the corner of 15th and I believe Clay.
Historically, there's several problems with water issues at Clay Street Park, correct, Chase?
That is correct. We've seen some significant localized flooding events. That's due to the undersized infrastructure. So right now we're trying to plan for obviously additional capacity. So we will be able to handle a little more water in that park area. But at some point we'll receive an event that will overtop that. But when we come around to doing the Main Street reconstruction, we're hoping to get added infrastructure in there that will be able to get to the park to help alleviate a lot of those flooding concerns.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions or comments from council? Seeing the public? Oh, yes, go ahead, Councilor Tiber.
I did have some concern and interest. The size of the biocell, I don't know if that limits the ability for using the interior park space for other recreational activity. So, maybe a comment on is that just a depression, or is it?
Well, and Councilor Tiber, I should have caught this earlier with Councilor Miller. We're looking at the date of this. We will be discussing this all in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Okay, sorry.
So would it be okay to keep that until that point? Sure. Any objections? Okay, thanks. So it's been motioned and seconded. I see no public requests for comment. So this requires a roll call vote.
Miller?
Aye.
Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Aye.
Dara?
Aye.
Sires?
Aye.
Tiber?
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item is allowing bills and payroll. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
The motion and second, and this requires a roll call vote.
Miller?
Aye.
Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Aye.
Dara?
Aye.
Sires?
Aye.
Tiber?
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any city council referrals for tonight? Seeing none, bring us over to city council updates. And seeing none, then staff updates. I know Mr. Gaines has some comments for us on COVID-19 and our posture now. So go ahead, Mr. Gaines. And we'll need your mic unmuted. There you go.
Sorry about that. Mr. Mayor, just real quick, two kind of updates on our COVID. As you all know, staff had a reported positive with an employee that worked in City Hall on Thursday. So Friday, we shut the building down and had a cleaning company come in and get it cleaned. Our protocol asked for that 24 hours after cleaning that we could open back up. So here we are. We're fortunate enough to open up on Monday. Falls Aquatic Center. Governor Reynolds now allowed all pools, aquatic centers to open up. So we are planning to open up on June 20th, limiting the capacity to about 600 folks in there to try to help with the social distancing. We're looking at season pass holders only at this time. We may expand that to daily rates as we move forward, but doing that. And then we're going to follow all the CDC guidelines with regard to patrons and swimmers and lifeguards. So, and there's a couple pages of those that we're trying to. Unfortunately, it's wearing masks outside, and I think that's going to be difficult, but those were the guidelines that are sent down by the CDC and ultimately came down from Blackhawk County Health as well. So there's any questions on those items.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? I think Councilor Tiber.
Mayor Green, this has been a pretty extensive conversation, I think, in the community about the conditions in which we open up the aquatic center. Number one, there's somewhat of an issue with just allowing season pass holders because it tends to have a economic bias to it. And number two is the wearing of masks outside of the pool, as well as just being able to congregate around households. Now, it seems like Waterloo has opened up their pools to great success, and they don't require that same. The CDC guidelines are recommended, but in fact, they actually recommend not wearing it in the pool for obvious reasons. It's just there's a level of difficulty there, and you start thinking about the environment, the fact that it's outdoor, you're surrounded by chlorine. There's no. The CDC has said that hot tubs, pools, and water parks are not an extremely high risk activity. It seems to me like we're really going to limit our ability to make this a revenue venture for us, and it's going to become a huge cost center, and we might have our tail between the legs as we relax things. Capacity constraints are understandable, but it seems to me like we've maybe gone overboard on some of the other controls that we have in place.
And I know that's been a consideration of other communities that have just decided not to open their pools this year. Cedar Rapids being one of them. They have 6 or 8 pools. Mason City, Charles City, Iowa City, I think, is another one. But there's a number of communities that have just decided not to. I think we need to decide to, from what I've heard from council members, is they would like to see us open our pool system. But I also think it's difficult to stray from what the guidelines are. If we want to do that, we can. But I do think it gets very difficult to stray too far from what some of the guidelines that are sent down from. We had an incident just the other day in one of the city facilities where 2 patrons, one didn't think they needed to wear a mask and one thought they needed to wear a mask. So it's community wide, and there's a wide differing of opinion on that.
So I might just follow up then and say perhaps it would be wise to go ahead and market the season passes, and if we realize only 10 to 15 people elect to buy the pass, we have to either look at modifying the regulation. I think it's just it's an expensive and time-consuming venture to prepare the pool for opening without knowing what kind of demand we'll have for season passes.
Well, and that's exactly this week. We're starting our season passes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning. We'll be selling season passes. If we get to a point where we're not selling very many, or we get to a point in the pool where the capacity is not an issue, we're going to slowly increase the capacity of the pool, and we could get to a point where we're actually selling day-to-day passes as well.
So once we're desperate, we'll sell more passes.
Excuse me?
Once we're desperate, we'll sell more passes then.
I also heard from a number of council members and community members that they want to make the pool open to Cedar Falls residents. And so is that the aim, or is it just opening it to all of the surrounding places that close their pool so their community members come here and ours can't attend, especially with decreased capacity?
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions for staff?
Well, I appreciate erring on the side of caution. I get it. It'd be nice to get out there, but I just assume Cedar Falls model caution in this particular circumstance.
Well, thanks, Mr. Dare. And there are definitely no easy decisions in this. Everything is like hard versus hard. So any other comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Sires, go ahead.
I'd like to see, aren't those just recommendations to wear the mask? I'd like to see our pools open. In the 60s and 70s, it was a huge thing to always go to the pool. And my wife spent a lot of her time there in the summertime. Our pools are quite important. I'd like to see them opened up. And as Nick said also, not to so much have the masks. The daily passes, I think that's only allowing season passes is getting kind of restrictive. But those are just my thoughts. I think the pools are very important to our community, and it'd be nice to get them open and as unrestricted as possible. That's all.
Okay, so that's all from staff updates. Because of our council agenda change, we have executive session approval first and then public forum. So is there a motion to, I'll read it first. Item 51 is executive session to discuss legal matters, to discuss strategy with counsel in matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent, where its disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the governmental body. And then secondly, to evaluate the performance of the city administrator pursuant to Iowa Code Section 21.51I following public forum. Is there a motion to approve our executive session?
So move.
Second.
The motion is seconded, and this requires a roll call vote, if no discussion.
Miller, Miller,
Aye. Sorry.
okay. Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Cyrus,
Aye.
Tiber,
Aye.
all voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So then that moves us into public forum. Speakers will have an opportunity for up to 5 minutes to speak on topics germane to city business. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? I see Leanne Saul, so go ahead, Ms. Saul. Name and address for the record, please.
Leanne Saul, 1825 Green Hill Road, Cedar Falls.
Yes,
I just wanted to make a comment about supporting our law enforcement officers, our public safety officers. I think they do a fine job in Cedar Falls, and we need to continue to support them, and as well as Work That Ways is working with our community. One of the questions I do have in regard to the vigil that was held, and then the question I have is, did they have to pay to barricade the street off for that event? Because when Community Main Street has events, we have to pay extra for barricades and for extra reserve officers. So I just had a question about when that vigil was held and those streets were blocked off and we had extra officers and everything, was that group, did they have to pay extra for that, or was that just something that the city did? And if that's the case, why is there a difference between that kind of a group and then when Community Main Street has an event or some other group has an event and we have to pay for extra reserve officers or to put up barricades? And
Okay, for city staff, we did talk about this as what the events requirements were and what permits were needed. So Director Rodenbeck, could you speak on that item? Would you be the best person for that from the event side?
Sure, I can talk a little bit. So when there are events, there are certain criteria that people have to apply and get a special event permit. And then there are certain things under that permit that may require insurance. And so I think that's what you're talking about, Mayor, is that we did determine for this event that it did not fall under those criteria for a special event permit.
Okay, and so there was no requirement for paying for police or extra security, correct?
Correct. And just to clarify on the...
You're muted, Jennifer.
Oops.
Rewind.
Go ahead.
So under the special event permit, just to clarify on the payment. So usually the payment has to do with the barricades that we would require. And so again, this was a sponsored event, and so city-sponsored event, and so we did not have that under a special event permit.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Frine, name and address for the record, please.
TJ Frine, 1319 Austin Way. I know I brought this up probably a year or so ago about the Place to Play Park Algonquin and Ashworth in the Green Hill Village edition. I've kind of been reaching out to neighbors and talking to them. Parking has kind of become an issue and maybe a safety hazard along Ashworth because it's parking on both sides of the road. And there's very limited, actually, what I would call off-street parking. I think there's maybe a dozen stalls or so. So it's something that needs to be considered because it becomes essentially a one-lane road, and there's a pretty steep incline where you can't see over the other side. So I can speak from personal experience that I've actually a car and I have both come over the hill at the same time. And then one of us has to reverse several car lengths back. Hopefully nobody else comes. And it kind of creates a kind of an issue for everybody. It's a good problem. I mean, the park is being used. It's packed all the time. It's a great thing to have in Cedar Falls, but good problems still require solutions. So just something maybe we need to look at Algonquin and Ashworth, doing something with that intersection or parking along Ashworth. Maybe I would suggest, and I think some of the neighbors have said, they'd like to see Ashworth go to one side parking only, which would, essentially create another a 2-lane road again for us. And then Ashworth is open from Green Hill to Hudson. There is no traffic control on Ashworth going through the neighborhood. So some other neighbors had some speed concerns, which I know I've seen the speed trailer out there a time or two by the park as well. See if I could get an update on the Whitewater project that's kind of been hanging around. I don't really hear as many people talk about it. See if the permits that come through, or if they're going to come through in the next month or so, just because I think it'd be a great addition to the downtown area. And then as far as parking during the committee of the whole meeting, I echo a lot of the concerns that come up, and namely the one was if the idea of the parking garage or parking ramp is coming from people that are going to occupy those businesses, and they're going to be leased spots. I believe one of the other council members says, what are the restrictions going to be, and as far as what time those spots are leased to the permit holders versus the public, and how many spots are actually going to be open to the public. If we're building it and the city's going to take on the responsibility of it, I would hate to see, all the first floor spots be leased to businesses. Namely, I think one was mentioned, like a carry out or catering type business that requires a lot of vehicles. So just something to consider. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going through the public participation rules. For a pretty significant item, you'd asked about the Whitewater project. I don't believe that this would be the appropriate time to go through an entire presentation on the Whitewater project, but certainly, and I think we're just calling it Cedar River recreational improvements now because of some of the changes to that. But I would certainly invite Mr. Frine to contact city staff during work hours and provide that information to you, unless council requests to have that as well. So
I think, Mayor, if I may, I would think staff can offer something regarding where that's at with
just like the 1-minute infomercial
update on time frame, really.
Okay, I can try and give you just a real brief where we're at. So 2 things. One is still looking for the permits. Some of this COVID stuff affected the Iowa U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the DNR. So their staffs are behind a little bit as well. The other thing is the funding, and there was $1.5 million worth that was in the funding, and that was from Blackhawk County Gaming. And so right now we do not know where that funding stands. So I would say that project's going to be delayed at least a year.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. And I see Mr. Kane, so go ahead, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Jim Skane, 2215 Clay Street. Mr. Mayor, you know that what I'm going to say is correct, but I hope you recognize it. And we have plenty of evidence that the ordinance 824, when it was passed, violated state law. And it is very clear that anything that violates state law is null and void. So I'm asking you to do the right thing and rule that 2824 is null and void.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane. And anyone else wishing to speak for public comment tonight? Seeing none, then that will conclude our city council meeting for tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
We don't need a motion.
Oh, okay. Then that's true because we're going to executive session. My apologies. So we are now moving to executive session, and I think this is our first time doing or second time on Zoom. So I'll remove participants and attendees who are not part of this session. And I know we're talking about the the legal things first, so we'll have more people for that. Just pull it up here.
Mayor, it's just elected officials, Kevin and I, that will be on all of it.
Okay.